Alright guys, I am back yet again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Dragon Empire Vermillion deck. So version 1, everything through the additional special set, so through a fraction of the booster set 11. And this deck is another one of the Encounter decks focused on some of the OG Narukami units. And this deck actually focuses on binding your opponent's rearguards and also allowing your Vanguard to both attack multiple targets at once and also potentially burn your opponent's Vanguard. So as always, we'll be going through the deck and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So starting first with the ride deck, we have our grade 0 starter, which is Spark Kid Dragoon. So when he's rode upon, if you win second, draw a card, standard D-Series starter, and of course the first of our Narukami Encounter cards. So next for the grade 1, we have Red River Dragoon. So he has two auto abilities. First one says when this unit is rode upon by a grade 2 card with only Narukami for its clan, you search your deck for up to one Eternal Thunderbolt, reveal it, put it into hand, and shuffle the deck. So Eternal Thunderbolt is a normal order in this deck that is very vital for the deck to function. You definitely want to be playing it every turn once you hit grade 3. So this ability will allow you to search out one copy of that card, so free +1, and get you a very important combo piece into your hand. And then he's got a second auto ability when he's on rearguard circle. That says when this unit boosts, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with only Narukami for its clan, you can counterblast one to choose one of your opponent's back row rearguards and bind it, and if you did not bind a card, you may soul charge 2. So we are running some copies of this guy in the main deck, so you can potentially use this ability, and it's a pretty good skill. It lets you counterblast one to possibly bind one of your opponent's back row rearguards, so that'll be a counterblast 1 for a -1, and if their back row is empty, you can soul charge 2 instead. Which this deck can get extremely Soul Blast heavy, so having this as a Soul Charge option can be very nice. Or also having that bind option can be good as well, since binding some of your opponent's cards can trigger some of the other abilities in this deck as well. So overall, just a useful ability in either helping you build resources or both get rid of some of your opponent's cards while also triggering your other effects. So next for the grade 2, we have Thunderstorm Dragoon. So again, he has two auto abilities. First one says when this unit is rode upon by a grade 3 card with only Narukami for its clan, you look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to one card with only Narukami for its clan, or up to one Eternal Thunderbolt from among them, reveal it, put it into hand, and shuffle the deck. So a pretty nice ability. It is a free +1 to your hand. Now you do have to check the top 7 to find either a Narukami unit or another copy of Eternal Thunderbolt. So there is a chance that it could whiff, but the chances are pretty low since we're running 4 copies of Eternal Thunderbolt and quite a few Narukami units in the main deck as well. So most likely you'll be able to find one from the top 7 and you can immediately get that card into your hand. So just some free card advantage, very, very nice. And then he has a second auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Vanguard with only Narukami for its clan, you soul charge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So once again, we are running more copies of this in the main deck, so you can use this skill, and it is another way to soul charge. You want as many ways as you can in this deck, because you're going to be using a lot of soul. So being able to build up that resource and also power himself up for one turn, pretty good ability. Now after you use this, he will be vanilla on your board, but there's a pretty good chance you're going to be calling something else over top of him anyway. So yeah, pretty good skill all around. So then lastly for the grade 3, we have Dragonic Kaiser Vermillion. So he has this activate ability that says once per turn, you can counterblast 1 to choose 2 of your units with only Narukami for their clan, and they get power plus 5,000 until end of turn. And until end of turn, when this unit would attack, You choose 2 of your opponent's rearguard circles, and this unit battles all of the units on the chosen rearguard circles and your opponent's Vanguard. So a very cool ability letting you attack potentially up to 3 of your opponent's units at the same time, their Vanguard and up to 2 of their rearguards, while also powering up 2 of your own Narukami units, so he can power up himself and 1 of your rearguards, or 2 of your rearguards, depending on how many Narukamis you have out on your board. So a decent power up and a good multi-targeted attacking skill. So this does put a lot of pressure on your opponent since they will have to guard for each one of those attack targets separately. So most of the time if they guard at all, they'll be guarding their Vanguard, so that means you should be able to hit some of their rearguards and pick apart their board pretty efficiently every turn. Which this ability, when comboed with the effect of Eternal Thunderbolt, which we'll be going through in a minute, is one of the key plays in this deck. So very, very important skill. And then he also has his auto ability that says once per turn at the end of the battle this unit attacked. If you played a normal order this turn, and your opponent's damage zone has 4 or less cards, you can discard a card from your hand to choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and deal 1 damage. So he also has the ability to potentially burn damage your opponent. Now, you can't finish them off with this skill, of course, because it only works if they have 4 or less cards in their damage zone. So you can't end a game with this, but obviously being able to directly damage your opponents is a very good skill. And this skill only works if you play a normal order this turn, but you should be playing Eternal Thunderbolts every turn from turn 3 onward. So that shouldn't be a problem to meet that condition. And you do have to discard 1 for the cost, so it is a -1 to you. But being able to directly damage your opponent off of that is definitely worth that loss of card advantage. So very, very cool skill, helping you put a ton of pressure on your opponent. So that is the ride deck. Moving on to the main deck. First off, for the grade 3s, we do have our 3 additional copies of Dragon Empire Vermillion for our Persona Ride purposes. And of course we have the alternate art secret rare, looking very, very nice. So the only other grade 3 we have is 4 copies of our normal order, Eternal Thunderbolt. So there's no cost to play it, and you can play this card from the drop, and you play it if you have a Vanguard with Vermillion in its card name, and only Narukami for its clan. And its effect lets you choose one of your Vanguards, and until end of turn, it gets a new continuous ability that says when your opponent's rearguard is hit by this unit, and would be retired from rearguard circle, you bind it instead of retiring. And then it also gets a second continuous ability that says if your opponent has no rear guards, all of your front row rear guards get power plus 5,000. And then if you play this card from the drop, you bind this card. So like I said, this is a very vital card for this deck. You do want to be playing this every turn, from turn 3 onwards as soon as you possibly can. Which your ride deck searches out 1 copy of this card for you, and you can play this card from the drop. So what that means is getting 1 copy of this card into your hand actually gives you up to 2 usages of it, since you can play it from your hand like normal and it goes to your drop, and then the next turn you can play it from your drop and bind it. So even if you only see the 1 copy you get from your ride deck, you will still be able to use this for at least 2 turns. And it gives you 2 new continuous abilities to your Vanguard that will allow Vermillion's multi-attack skill to potentially bind your opponent's rearguards when you hit them instead of retiring them. So that will definitely help you screw with decks that, has like drop zone recursion or whatever, making it a lot harder for your opponent to get those units back. And it will also trigger some of the other abilities in this deck, being able to bind one of your opponent's cards. So very helpful in both those regards. And it also gives you the second continuous ability that will let you power up your front row rear guards if you manage to clear out your opponent's entire board, which you should be able to do between Vermillion attacking into some of their rear guards and then some of our other cards being able to pick off your opponent's rear guards as well. Emptying out their board shouldn't be too much of an issue. And of course this skill can also be a fallback if your opponent just doesn't have any rear guards to begin with. You'll still be able to get something out of this card with that little power gain, even if you don't have any rearguard attack targets to attack into with Vermillion skill. So yeah, overall pretty good card and definitely a vital one for this deck to be able to function properly. So that is all the grade 3s, moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we do have 3 additional copies of Thunderstorm Dragoon, mainly for his, on-call skill. Being able to build up that extra soul is definitely an important thing in this deck. So next up, we also have 2 copies of Dragonic Death Scythe. So he has a continuous ability that says during your turn, if your opponent's front row has no rear guards, this unit gets power plus 5,000. So pretty basic power-up ability if you can empty out your opponent's front row, which if you attack with Vermillion before this card and they got a full front row, you can just target all 3 of their front row units with his attack and potentially empty out that front row for this ability. So you should be able to get this skill online most of the time. And then he also has his auto ability that says when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with only Narukami for its clan, you can Soul Blast 2 to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it, and if you did not bind a card, you draw a card. So pretty nice ability, letting you either take out one of your opponent's rear guards or letting you get a draw if they don't have any rear guards left. So it's either a -1 to them or a +1 to you. Now, it is a Soul Blast 2 cost for this, so like I said, soul cost can get pretty steep in this deck. So, be mindful of that resource, as always. But again, having that option to either build up your own card advantage, or having another way to bind one of your opponent's cards, and again, trigger your other skills, can definitely be a useful ability. So, pretty good card overall. So, lastly for the grade 2s, we have 4 copies of Drag Ritter Latifa. So she has 2 auto abilities. First one says when this card is placed on rear guard circle other than by a unit card's ability, if you played a normal order this turn, you can Soul Blast 1 to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguards from among them, and reveal it. Call it to rear guard circle if it is a unit card, and put it into hand if it is a normal order, and shuffle the deck. So this is a pretty good ability. It's basically a Soul Blast 1 for a +1, letting you check the top 5 and either add a normal order to your hand or superior call a unit to your board. So you do have to play a normal order again in order to trigger this ability. So just play Eternal Thunderbolts before you call this card, and then you'll be able to use this skill. Now, once again, it is another Soul Blast cost, but, a Soul Blast 1 for a +1 is a pretty good deal overall. So helping you dig for your extra copies of your order, potentially to set up next turn, or just being able to help you build a board is a very helpful skill. So then she also has her second auto ability that says when this unit attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of that battle for each of your opponent's open rearguard circles in the same column as this unit. So a pretty nice power-up ability as well, potentially letting her gain an extra 10k power if you empty out the entire column in front of her, which again, you want to try to empty out your opponent's board as much as possible. So between all your binding abilities, taking out their rear guards, you should be able to get at least 5k off of this, and 10k a decent amount of time as well. So she makes for a nice beat stick unit as well. So that is all the grade 2s, moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we do have our 2 additional copies of Red River Dragoon. Again, just for his on-boost skill, giving you either that extra bind option or that extra soul charging option. So next up, we have 4 copies of Rising Phoenix. So he has an auto ability when he's in your drop zone that says when any card is bound during your turn by your card effect, if you have a Vanguard with only Narukami for its clan, you can Soul Blast 1 and call this card to rearguard circle. And then he also has an activate ability when he's on rearguard circle that says that you can retire this unit to choose one of your units and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this is absolutely one of the most important cards in this deck, since this card will allow you to do multi-attack, which you can do potentially up to 5 attacks per turn if you have 2 copies of this set up in your drop zone, since he revives himself from the drop whenever a card is bound during your turn. So that means if you bind one of your opponent's rearguards during your battle phase with either Vermillion's on hit skill Death Scythes on attack skill or Red River Dragoons on boost skill, then you can trigger this ability and revive him from your drop zone to your front row. Now, once again, this is another Soul Blast cost, so again, mind that resource. But it does allow you to have that extra attack every turn, so 4, potentially 5 attacks if you have the 2 copies of this set up, and you've already attacked with your 2 rear guard columns to begin with before you revive him. Now, he is just a grade 1, so when you call him, he doesn't power himself up any, so he will just be at 8k in your front row. But again, if you can empty out your opponent's board, then Eternal Thunderbolt skill will give him an extra 5k. And of course, if you Persona Road that turn or whatever, he can be powered up in other ways as well. So you will have to rely on your other cards in order to get him hitting some decent numbers. But if you can pull that off and get your full 5 attack combo on top of your Vanguard attacking into 3 targets at once, then you can definitely put a lot of pressure on your opponents with all that offense. Plus, thanks to his activate ability, if you want to set him back up in your drop zone next turn in order to loop this entire combo, you can just retire him for that cost and power up one of your other units, and then call something better to the rearguard circle that he was on. So that will allow you to loop him back from your drop the next turn and still get that attack combo in. So yeah, absolutely one of the most important cards in this deck. So next up we got 2 copies of Staticrack Dragon. So he has an auto ability that says when your other unit is placed on a rearguard circle in the same column as this unit during your turn, that placed unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this is just a basic power-up ability giving 5k to any unit that you call in front of him. However, this ability is not once per turn, so if you plop him down in your back row and then you just normal call whoever in front of him during your main phase, you will be able to power up that unit. And then if you superior call Rising Phoenix during your battle phase over top of the unit that you called in front of him, then this ability will trigger again, giving Rising Phoenix an extra 5k as well. So that is a combo I like pulling off with this deck, since most of the time you're going to have to, be calling Rising Phoenix over top of something anyway. You might as well combo it with this card to give Rising Phoenix that little extra power boost and help him hit some better numbers. So just a helpful offensive card all around. So next we got 2 copies of Stealth Dragon Togachirashi. So he has this auto ability that says when this card is discarded from hand during your turn, you may put this card into your soul. So this ability will work if you discard him early game for your ride deck, or if you discard him for the cost of Vermillion's burning skill. So it just allows you to put him directly into your soul, so that will help you with that soul resource. Again, we have a ton of soul blasting costs in this deck, and any extra soul is always helpful. So turning that discard into a resource is just a useful ability. So the only other grade ones we have are Sentinels. So first off we have 3 copies of Sparkle Rejector Dragon, just your standard perfect guard, as well as the 1 copy of our Blitz Order Elementaria Sanctitude, which you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So that is all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 7 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal, and 1 over. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 3 copies of Conduct Spark Dragon, so just your vanilla crit. Additionally, we have 4 copies of Burning Flail Dragon, crit with a skill at the end of the battle it boosted. You can put into your soul to give one of your units 2,000 power until end of turn. So this can just be an option to build up that soul a little bit more if you are really desperate for it. Next up for the draws, we have 4 copies of Flare Veil Dragon, draw with a skill. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000. So your 10k shield draw trigger. And then for the heals, we have 4 copies of White Light Dragon Parasolace. So just the vanilla heal. Of course, if you want to run any effect heals, you can. And then lastly for our over trigger is Dragon Deity King of Resurgence, Dragveda. So his additional effect lets you choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. So always an extremely dangerous skill, letting you restand your Vanguard, so you get an extra Vanguard attack and extra twin drive out of it. So you got more trigger chances, a +2 to your hand, and thanks to Vermillion's ability, he can attack 3 targets on both those attacks. So you can potentially attack into your opponent's Vanguard twice with your Vanguard, and also hit up to 4 of their rearguards. So yeah, definitely a devastating trigger in this deck specifically. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our one fight with it. And let's see, I think we'll fight Sam this time. And we will be going first.
Stand up, the Vanguard. Stand and draw.
Alright, so we'll discard Togachirashi to ride. And Togachirashi's skill let us put him into the soul. So then we'll just end our turn. And I'll let that one through. And we get a heal trigger once we have nothing to heal, but that power will shut down his last rearguard attack. Alright, so we'll discard Rising Phoenix, since we want him in the drop anyway. To ride Thunderstorm Dragoon. And Red River Dragoon's skill will let us search out another copy of Eternal Thunderbolt to put in our hand. So then we'll just go ahead and attack.
Vanguard ni attack. No guard. Check the drive trigger. Damage check. Front trigger.
And he gets a front trigger that is wasted.
Turn end. Ore no turn. Noro. Ride. Skill発動.
As he searches out a copy of Kill Shroud from his deck, which he plays. So I'll let that one through. And he got no trigger there, so his rearguard won't be able to hit us again. Alright, so we'll discard one of these orders. We can play it from the drop anyway. To ride Dragonic Kaiser Vermillion. And Thunderstorm Dragoon will let us check the top 7. And we find a Red River, we find a Persona Ride copy, and we find another copy of our order. So I have all of those in my hand already. So we'll go ahead and just add that Persona Ride copy to our hand. So then the first thing I want to do is play Eternal Thunderbolt. So that'll give our Vanguard the 2 continuous abilities. So then we'll call Latifah from our hand over here. And we'll use her skill to Soul Blast one. And we will check the top 5. And we found Statacrack Dragon, so we'll Superior Call him over here. So then we'll also go ahead and we'll call out Death Scythe in front of Statacrack. And Statacrack's skill will give him an extra 5 hit. So then we'll also go ahead and plop down this Red River Dragoon behind Latifah and use Vermillion's Activate ability to Counterblast one. And we can power up 2 of our Narukami units, so we'll power up Vermillion and we'll go ahead and power up Red River Dragon. So with that, I think we are good to go. So we will go ahead and attack. And let's see, I'm going to attack with Latifah first.
Vanguardにアタック
And I'm not going to use Red River's ability right now, as he guards. So then we'll attack with Vermillion, and he only has 1 rear guard out, but you still have to pick 2 circles. So we'll attack his 1 rear guard and his Vanguard. And he no guards both of them. And we'll get a draw trigger. So I will give that power to Death Scythe. Oh, we drew our over trigger. So we deal his Vanguard 1 damage, and his rear guard gets bound, which will trigger the effect of Rising Phoenix in our drop zone. So we'll go ahead and Soul Blast 1. And we will Superior Call him over top of Latifah. And then we can use Vermillion's auto ability to discard 1 from our hand, so we'll drop that Static Crack. And we can burn his Vanguard. So we dealt him 1 more damage, so now we can attack with Rising Phoenix, since he gained an extra 5k, since he has no rear guards out thanks to our order skill. And that's that one through 2. And he gets a crit trigger. So then we'll attack with Death Scythe, boosted by Static Crack for 43,000. So then we'll use Death Scythe's ability to Soul Blast 2. And draw, since he has no rear guards. And he let that one through 2 and got another crit that is wasted. So we got him to 5 already before he even hits grade 3. As he searches out a copy of Dusting from his deck. Winchy, please. And then he searches out a copy of Death Winds as well, which you can't use till next turn, so he has to put Dusting into his soul. So that gave us Vanguard 10k and Guard Restrict. And he searches out another copy of Death Winds. So let's see, we'll guard that one on that draw. And if that attack hits, he'll get to restand his Vanguard. So I think I'll guard that with that over trigger. He gets another crit trigger. And that is 2 crits, so I hate to, but I think I'm gonna let that through 2.
ゲットクリティカルトリガー
And we get a crit trigger that is wasted.
プラスパワープラスターンエンドマイターンドロー
Alright, so now we can Persona Ride.
今こそ真の力を表せペルソナライド
So then from our drop zone, we'll go ahead and play Eternal Thunderbolt.
オーダー発動バイン
So that card will be bound. And then we'll use Rising Phoenix's Activate ability
スキル発動だ
to retire him. And we will give 5k to Red River Dragoon. So then I am going to go ahead and we'll call Thunderstorm Dragoon over here.
コールスキル
And we'll
発動
use
だ
his skill to Soul Charge
パワープラス
and gain 5k. And I'm actually going to go ahead and call this other Rising Phoenix
コール
and use its ability as well
スキル発動だ
to retire itself. And we'll give that 5k to Static
パワー
Crack.
プラス
And then we can use Vermillion's Activate ability to Counterblast.
スキル発動だ
And we will power up Vermillion and Death Scythe this
パワ
time.
ープラス
So with that, I think we are good to go. So we will attack with Death Scythe first, not boosted.
ヴァンガードにアタックだ
And I'm not going to use his ability right here, because I want to save that soul. So then we can go ahead and attack with Thunderstorm, and we will boost with Red River.
ヴァンガードにアタックだ
And we'll use Red River Dragoon's ability
スキル発動だ
Counterblast
バイン
and bind his back row rear guard. So I'm going to go ahead and activate one of these Rising Phoenix's abilities. So we will Soul Blast one,
スキル発動
and we will Superior Call him over top of Death Scythe,
セリオルコール
which will trigger Static Crack
スキル
skill
発動だ
to give him 5k. And we're not going to revive the other one right now,
スキル発動完全ガード
as he perfect guards. So then we can attack with Vermillion, and he's got 2 rear guards out, so we'll attack his entire board.
アタックだスキル発動
And he perfect guards his Vanguard again,
ガード
but his rear guards will be hit.
ゲットクリティカルトリガー
And we get a crit trigger, so we'll give both those effects to Rising Phoenix.
クリティカルプラスパワープラスチェックザドライブトリガーまだまだまだまだ
So both those rear guards will be bound,
バインド
which will once again trigger our Rising Phoenix, so we will Soul Blast one,
スキル発動だ
and Superior Call him over top of Thunderstorm,
セリオルコール
and our front row rear guards gain 5k since we emptied out his board, so we will attack with our right Rising Phoenix
ヴ
first,
ァンガードにアタックだガード
and he guards. But then we can attack with the left Rising Phoenix, boosted by Static Crack, for 51,002 crit,
ヴァンガードにアタックだノーダウン
and he's gotta let it through.
まだまだダメージチェック
And we got him with that one.
俺の勝ちだ
So there you go, that was my Vermillion deck. Pretty fun deck to play, being able to bind a lot of your opponent's units and also attack multiple targets with your Vanguard is definitely always fun. So anyway, I'll be back soon with more deck profiles. Next up, I'll be doing my Greed on Masks deck. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.